Tell me about a complicated man. Muse, tell me how he wandered and was lost when he had wrecked the holy town of Troy, and where he went and who he met, the pain he suffered in the storms at sea, and how he worked to save his life and bring his men back home. He failed to keep them safe. Poor fools. They ate the sun god's cattle and the god kept them from home. Now, goddess, child of Zeus, tell the old story for our modern times. Find the beginning. When getting to know a goddess like Circe, it can help to see these kinds of stories told about her. This doesn't mean all these stories are accurate or helpful to know, but they offer pieces in the puzzle that make up the complexity of Circe. Apollonius, following Hesiod, says that Circe came to the island over against Aeaea on the chariot of Helios, and he called it Hesperion because it lies towards the west. Circe lived on the island of Aeaea, also called the Island of Dawn, with some stories describing the way she was exiled to the mythical place by her father after Circe killed her husband and turned a romantic rival into Scylla, a sea monster. Translations speak of her being taken to the island by the golden chariot of her father, Helios. Monaghan states, this illustrious witch was said to have gained the rulership of Kochlet near the Black Sea by marrying its prince. Then she killed him so that she could rule alone. When Circe's subjects discovered her crime, they rose against her. The enchantress fled, escaping her father's rays to the island of Aeaea. Sources also describe how Circe was brought to the island by dragons, not necessarily by force. In other stories, there seems to be a conversation between Aphrodite and Medea, with Aphrodite in disguise as Circe. Circe in this conversation talks about not liking her father's island, so it is possible that Circe simply left to find a better place to inhabit. While Madeline Miller's Circe speaks of the dramatic exile by Helios, this might be a storytelling device to give more rationale for Circe's eventual actions and reactions. No matter how Circe came to be on the island of Aeaea, the mythical and magical place became her home. This wildly and densely forested place was the home of men who were turned into animals, lions and wolves. In the Odyssey, the island also includes wide areas of pasture for animals, as well as high bluffs from which the sea could be seen in all directions. While it is not clear where this island was located, there is speculation that Aeaea would have been an island off the coast of Italy. On the island, Circe lived in a grand stone house so hidden by dense forests that it could not be easily seen or discovered. Odysseus hastened to tie the cunning knot which Lady Circe had brought to his knowledge in other days. In the Odyssey, Odysseus makes his way to the island of Circe, knowing a goddess with braided hair and human speech lived there. It was rumored she had strange, even magical powers, for her family also had special talents for sorcery. Weary from the journey, Odysseus and his men found a place to shelter their boat, staying on the island shore for 2 days. On the 3rd day, Odysseus travelled out from the boat, hoping to find human contact and food for his men, but finding none. He started to return to the boat and came upon a stag that he killed for food. As the dawn rose, Odysseus gathered all of his men to explore the island to see what they could use or find. At that time, it was unclear if the island had any inhabitants, but smoke rose from the dense woodland, hinting at the presence of someone or something. The men were afraid, having already known of the Cyclops and other monsters during their journey. They worried for their lives. and they cried out in fear. But Odysseus put them into groups and moved to the island to see what they could find. Soon they came upon the stone palace of Circe, surrounded by entranced animals who greeted the men. This confused the soldiers, who could also hear the song of Circe from within. The men followed the sound, thinking the group of men would be more effective and powerful in their numbers. Circe called the men into her palace, though one soldier stayed outside, fearing the worst. But she was kind, and they were hungry. She offered them a cheese and barley meal with honey and wine. What the men did not know was the potion Circe had added to the food, so they ate until they had their fill. But in doing so, they were turned into pigs, from snout to bristles. The one man, Eurylochus, who did not enter, ran back to the ship to tell of the horror. But he could not speak, as he was so sad about the outcome of the other men. In response, Odysseus put his sword on his back and gathered his bow to prepare to fight Circe and get his men back. The man who survived was less than thrilled to return to Circe and begged Odysseus to stay. But Odysseus knew he had to go, leaving the weeping man at the ship. At the door of Circe's house, Odysseus met with Hermes, who also warned him of entering the place and how he would be turned into a swine. Hermes offered to help Odysseus by giving him a magic herb of virtue to offer to Circe for her to make a potion. This potion would make it so Circe would be unable to enchant him. And even more, the potion would cause her to shrink back if Odysseus were to rush her with a sword. Hermes then told Odysseus to lay with Circe, as that will help to release his men. But it was important for Odysseus to have Circe swear the great oath of the Blessed Ones to plot no mischief in the days after. The events transpired just as Hermes described, causing Circe to be confused by her position not working as it should have and always had, and to offer to have Odysseus lie with her in bed with an acknowledgement that they needed to trust each other. At his request, Circe uttered the oath and they lay together. During this time, handmaidens moved through the palace cleaning and preparing food. Odysseus was dressed in a fine robe after a bath. A delicious meal was laid out before him, but he was unhappy and would not eat. She asked him why, and he admitted he was unsure if he could trust her, even though she had sworn the oath. After all, she had seen his men be turned into animals. Odysseus asked to see his men, and Circe brought them into the room in the shape of a swine. She anointed them all, one by one, with a charm, turning them back into the form of men. In seeing the men reunited in joy and contentment, Circe offered them compassion and told Odysseus to bring the rest of the men from the ship to the palace. The men were overjoyed to see Odysseus again and to find out their friends were safe. They were more than happy to return to the palace, where there was plenty of food and drink. Once again, Eurylochus hesitated and didn't want to go back into the possibility of danger, but eventually he agreed to go, following the will of Odysseus. They were greeted by Circe and the men, who had been dressed, anointed and fed. This was the way of the group in Circe's palace for a year, with Circe insisting they stay and regain the strength they lost in the previous journey. At the end of the year, Circe made good on her promise to help the men return home, as Circe did not want Odysseus and the others to stay out of spite and not desire. She instructed them to follow the way to the house of Persephone and Hades. Circe promised Odysseus that she would help get him to where he needed to go. While Odysseus traveled and returned from the underworld unharmed, he returned to Circe. She let him know how to bypass the sirens he would find on the way back, and in doing so, Circe allowed Odysseus to return from his 20-year voyage. A reader may want to take note the response of Penelope upon the return of Odysseus, and how she waited for him and remained faithful, and likely was expected to remain faithful. What else does Penelope expect and get from Odysseus? First of all, proof that she is in her way as important to him as he is to her. She does not demand strict fidelity. She and Helen do not object to their husband's liaisons with other women, so long as they are temperate. Odysseus tells Penelope about Circe and Calypso. How Circe behaves also seems to align with other actions of goddesses in the Greek myths, as these myths have been translated. The mature goddesses are less helpful to the men than the virgins. Like Calypso and Circe, they are more likely to detain a hero through their sexual magic. That sting of the stingray, it was which his mother Circe, skilled in many drugs, gave of old to Teolonigor for his long-hilted spear, that he might array for his foe's death from the sea. And he beached his ship on the island that pastured goats, and he knew not that he was harrying the flocks of his own father, and on his aged sire who came to the rescue, even on him whom he was seeking, he brought an evil fate. There the cunning Odysseus, who had passed through countless woes of the sea in his laborious adventures, the grievous stingray slew with one blow. Teolonigor, the son of Circe and Odysseus, was a child of many talents, was sadly also the one who killed his father accidentally. In some tellings of the tale, Odysseus found out ahead of time from an oracle that he would die at the hand of his son. Because of this, Odysseus did not let his son into his palace, but when he heard the commotion caused by Teolonigor not being able to get in the door, Odysseus rushed out, thinking it was Telemachus, only to be struck and killed by his son. Teolonigor took his father's body back to Penelope, Odysseus's wife, and then decided to marry his father's wife. This death happens after Odysseus has left Circe on her island, after he gets help from Circe to return home safely after 20 years of journeying. We wonder if Circe did not help out, if Odysseus might have avoided this fate, even though the oracle prophesied it. And it might be curious to think about whether Circe knew this fate was coming, so that is why she helped Odysseus return home. Again, these are only questions that arrive when there are powerful gods and goddesses getting into trouble that seems avoidable in some ways. If you want to learn far more about Circe and Greek mythology, then please take a look at our book, Pagan Portals Circe by Aeaea Moon, who also provided the words for this video. Meet Circe, feared goddess of Homer's Odyssey, who used her knowledge of nature and sorcery to transform those who displeased her into animals and monsters. Author Aeaea Moon reveals the goddess in her ancient Greek context, and offers unique insight to and explanations of her relationships, deeds, and desires, while offering practical advice on how to meet with this engaging goddess today. It's available from Moonbooks Publishing. Thank you so much for watching. A special thank you to our members. You too can become a member and gain early access to videos just like this one. Hit the join button for more information. Subscribe for weekly videos, ring the bell for notifications, and we will see you next time.